Have you ever walked into a room and felt completely invisible, your words falling flat while others command attention effortlessly? What if I told you that true power has nothing to do with being liked or having the perfect personality? The difference between those who lead and those who follow isn't about charm. It's about something far more primal and profound. In today's world, we're constantly bombarded with advice about soft leadership and winning people over. But what if that's precisely what's keeping you from ascending to real authority? The harsh truth is that history's most influential leaders didn't ask politely for their place at the table. They claimed it through sheer force of presence. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Has this ever happened to you? You share an idea in a meeting only to be ignored, then minutes later someone else repeats the same thought and receives all the credit? This isn't coincidence. It's the direct result of how you present yourself, how you speak, and most importantly, how you wield silence. The ancient wisdom of Machiavelli reveals something that modern leadership books desperately try to hide. Real authority doesn't come from being agreeable. It comes from creating immediate silence when you speak, from making others straighten their posture in your presence, from turning your every sentence into an undisputable verdict. Stay with me until the end of this video, because what you're about to discover might fundamentally change how others perceive you forever. The principles I'm sharing aren't taught in business schools or leadership seminars. They're too raw, too honest, and frankly, too effective for the masses. The first secret lies in understanding that leaders never request authority or wait for permission. They radiate it through their demeanor and speech patterns. Their authority isn't granted. It emanates from within. Think about how the atmosphere shifts when certain people enter a room. That's not accident or charisma. It's cultivated power. When you truly embody leadership, you stop explaining yourself. Explanations are for those seeking approval. Declarations are for those who already possess it. Next, time you're challenged, resist the urge to defend your position. Instead, employ strategic silence until the questioner's own uncertainty undermines them. Watch how quickly the power dynamic shifts in your favor. What separates the forgettable from the unforgettable isn't intelligence or even experience. It's the ability to command presence through calculated speech and deliberate silence. In the coming minutes, I'll reveal exactly how to master this art, transforming not just how you speak, but how others respond to every word you utter. The path to commanding real power begins with understanding that leadership isn't about who you are. It's about who others perceive you to be, and that perception is entirely within your control. The question isn't whether you can lead, but whether you're willing to abandon the comfortable illusions keeping you from true authority. If you're ready to master the art of commanding authority in any room, hit subscribe now. This channel is your gateway to power that most will never understand. The transformation begins the moment you recognize that most people misunderstand the nature of power completely. They believe power lies in constant action, in filling every moment with words and movement. But the hidden truth? Real power often resides in what you don't say. Consider the last time you were in a conversation with someone who couldn't bear a moment of silence. They rushed to fill every pause, revealing their insecurities with each unnecessary word. This compulsion to fill silence is the mark of someone who fears their own thoughts and fears the judgment of others even more. The most profound impact comes when you master the deliberate pause. Think of silence not as empty space, but as a weapon in your arsenal, a tool that creates unbearable pressure in those around you. When you ask a question and then remain perfectly still, maintaining unwavering eye contact, something fascinating happens. People begin to squirm. They feel compelled to speak, to explain, to justify themselves without you saying another word. This isn't manipulation. It's simply human psychology at work. Nature abhors a vacuum, and the human mind abhors silence. When you create that vacuum through your restraint, others rush to fill it, often revealing far more than they intended. Your journey toward Machiavellian leadership requires understanding that every interaction is, in some sense, a form of psychological warfare. Not because you wish ye harm, but because influence is always a contest of wills. When you pause deliberately before responding to a challenge, you create a space where the other person begins to doubt their position. Did they say something foolish? Was their point unclear? Should they backtrack? Behind the scenes of every power dynamic is this dance of comfort and discomfort. The person who remains comfortable with tension inevitably controls the conversation, while others fidget, look away, or babble nervously to dispel the tension. You simply observe, still, silent, and in complete command. What most people never realize is that silence isn't merely absence, it's presence in its most concentrated form. When you speak sparingly but maintain intense focus on the other person, you create the impression that every word they utter is being weighed and measured against some invisible standard. This alone is enough to make most people second-guess themselves. Think of silence as the throne from which you rule. When you sit confidently in silence, others will bow to your authority without even realizing they're doing so. They'll explain more than necessary, seek your approval through their eyes, and unconsciously adjust their positions to align with what they believe you want to hear. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining how precision in language acts as the perfect complement to strategic silence. Because when silence is your canvas, each word you choose becomes a deliberate brushstroke, and every sentence a verdict that others can't help but remember. Write in the comments, "Silence is my weapon," if you're ready to master this critical element of leadership power. The orchestration of discomfort is perhaps the most profound revelation about leadership that few will ever master. When you deliberately create silence that makes others uncomfortable, you're not merely pausing, you're actively seizing control of the entire interaction. This is the alchemy that transforms ordinary conversations into opportunities for dominance. Consider the mindset shift required here. Most people view conversation as a collaborative exchange, but the Machiavellian leader sees it as a battlefield where psychological advantage determines the victor. When someone challenges you and you respond not with defensive explanations, but with calculated silence and unwavering eye contact, you force them to confront their own insecurities. In that moment of self-doubt, their position weakens, while yours strengthens without you uttering a single word. The journey toward mastery begins when you recognize that silence isn't passive. It's the most active form of communication available to you. It's not emptiness but fullness, not weakness but supreme confidence. Those who understand this truth wield enormous influence while appearing to do nothing at all. This is why I say silence isn't absence. It's the throne from which true leaders rule. Behind the scenes of every powerful interaction is this invisible dance of comfort and discomfort. When others squirm in the void you've created, they unconsciously acknowledge your dominance. They fill the silence with concessions, with explanations, with attempts to please. All while you remain perfectly still, giving nothing away, compromising nothing. But the counterbalance to strategic silence is precision in speech. When you do choose to break the silence, your words must cut like blades rather than fall like feathers. Most people communicate like they're swinging dull sticks, rambling, imprecise, hoping something connects. The impact of your transformation will be immediate when you begin speaking with clean, cold exactness. This demands intellectual discipline. Every unnecessary word you eliminate adds power to those you choose to keep. Every vague phrase you replace with precise language increases your authority. The decision to strip your communication down to its essential core creates the impression that each word you speak has been carefully weighed, measured, and delivered with intention. The hidden truth is that precise language creates clarity, and clarity creates compliance. When you speak with razor-sharp precision, you slice through confusion and resistance. People stop questioning and start following, not because you've convinced them through lengthy explanation, but because the sheer precision of your words makes alternative perspectives seem muddled by comparison. Now let me show you how precision combines with presence to create an aura of command that makes people instinctively straighten their posture the moment you enter a room. Drop in the comments. My words are blades. If you're committed to sharpening your communication to its most powerful edge, the revelation that transforms average communicators into commanding leaders begins with recognizing the fatal flaws most people never overcome. Vagueness, rambling, and the desperate need to over-explain are not merely stylistic choices. They are fundamental weaknesses that undermine authority at its core. When you ramble, you're not just wasting words, you're broadcasting insecurity for all to witness. Consider this breakthrough in understanding. A single razor-sharp sentence can annihilate resistance faster than 1,000 carefully crafted paragraphs. This isn't hyperbole, it's psychological reality. The human mind responds to certainty and precision with an almost instinctual surrender. When faced with absolute clarity, doubt crumbles and compliance emerges naturally, without force. The enlightenment comes when you embrace the counterintuitive truth that restraint is not limitation, it's liberation. By saying only what advances your purpose and ruthlessly cutting everything else, you create an aura of calculated intention. Each word gains weight because it exists in contrast to the words you chose not to speak. The decision to speak less paradoxically makes others hang on your every syllable. Subscribe. Now to continue your journey into the psychology of power. Each video here is another weapon in your arsenal of influence. Behind this principle lies a profound psychological insight. Humans are meaning-making creatures who fill vacuums with their own projections. The less you reveal, the more they wonder. The more they wonder, the more they project their own fears, assumptions, and eventually submission into the void you've created. This is the alchemy that turns restraint into control. Most people circle their target, softening edges and approaching indirectly. They fear confrontation more than they desire clarity. The awakening happens when you commit to striking directly at the heart of the matter, identifying the weakness, the insecurity, the hesitation, and addressing it with surgical precision. This directness doesn't alienate. It commands respect precisely because it's so rarely encountered. The journey of mastery requires intellectual honesty about your current communication. Patterns. Do you use 10 words where 3 would suffice? Do you explain yourself repeatedly, hoping for agreement? Do you circle difficult topics rather than addressing them directly? Each of these habits broadcasts weakness rather than authority. The metamorphosis begins when you start treating words as precious resources rather than infinite commodities. Every unnecessary word you eliminate is weight lifted from your presence. Every vague phrase you replace with exact language multiplies your authority. Every direct statement you deliver without softening or justification establishes you as someone who needs neither approval nor permission. Let me guide you through the psychological architecture of commanding presence, how your body becomes the physical manifestation of your internal authority, creating a gravitational pull that others cannot help but respond to. Type in the comments. Restraint is power. If you've recognized how saying less can actually make you more influential in every conversation, The essence of leadership authority emerges when you grasp this fundamental truth. Clarity is not merely a communication skill, it's the cornerstone of undeniable power. Every unnecessary word you eliminate doesn't just streamline your message, it adds tangible weight to your presence. This transformation happens because scarcity creates value. When your words become rare resources rather than abundant commodities, each one carries the impact of deliberate choice. Watch what happens when you're in a room with someone who speaks loosely, jumping between half-formed thoughts and scattered ideas. Their verbal clumsiness creates a backdrop against which your precision shines with blinding clarity. The revelation here isn't about winning arguments through superior logic. It's about creating such definitive statements that the very possibility of argument evaporates. When you speak with absolute clarity, you don't defeat opposition. You prevent it from forming in the first place. This mindset shift extends beyond words into your physical embodiment of authority. The profound insight that most never grasp is that commanding presence isn't an accident of genetics or personality, it's deliberately engineered. True leaders don't hope to be noticed when they enter a room. They design their energy, posture, and aura to demand attention without ever requesting it. Presence becomes the invisible throne you carry everywhere, affecting others before a single word leaves your mouth. The impact begins with your physical stance. Your body makes declarations before your voice does. Shoulders back, chest open, chin steady. These aren't merely posture corrections, they're non-verbal statements that broadcast you are anchored, immovable, untouchable. Machiavelli understood that perception shapes reality more powerfully than truth itself. People don't follow the objectively strongest individual, they follow the one who appears strongest through deliberate physical presence. Behind the scenes of every powerful interaction is this unspoken language of the body. The decision to take up space unapologetically, to move with unhurried deliberation, to maintain unwavering eye contact. These choices create gravitational force that pulls others into your orbit. Most people shrink themselves physically, hurry their movements, and dart their eyes nervously. By doing the opposite, you create immediate contrast that registers subconsciously in everyone you encounter. The journey toward commanding presence requires brutal honesty about your current physical habits. Do you make yourself smaller in meetings? Do you fidget when uncomfortable? Do you avoid direct eye contact during challenging moments? Each of these unconscious behaviors broadcasts submission rather than authority. The awakening begins when you recognize these patterns and deliberately reshape them. Consider what happens when someone enters your field of vision whose very posture radiates certainty. Before they speak, before you know their credentials or status, your body responds to their presence. This isn't coincidence or charisma. It's the calculated result of physical discipline so consistent it becomes second nature. Let me guide you through the powerful psychology of eye contact and how it creates dominance without aggression. Write in the comments, "I command presence," if you're ready to transform not just how you speak, but how your very being occupies space in every room you enter. The transformation of your leadership presence continues with mastering the psychology of eye contact. This isn't about staring people down aggressively. The weak avoid eye contact entirely, while the insecure dart their eyes frantically. But the leader holds gaze with precision, not aggression. When you look at someone, you're not merely seeing them, you're making them feel seen, exposed, and measured. This silent assessment creates immediate psychological dominance. The revelation that changes everything is understanding that eye contact should not be frantic fire. It should be steady steel. It communicates that you are evaluating every word, weighing every claim, measuring every proposal against some invisible standard that only you fully comprehend. This creates a subconscious urgency in others to meet that standard, to earn your approval, to pass your silent examination. The impact extends to your physical movement patterns. Most people have never considered that how they move through space broadcasts their internal state to everyone watching. Frantic, rushed movements signal anxiety and desperation. The mindset shift happens when you begin moving slowly, deliberately, with unmistakable intention. Every gesture feels earned, every step carries weight. Your physical movements become punctuation for your words, reinforcing rather than undermining your message. Behind the scenes of commanding presence lies the hidden truth of energy conservation. Average individuals leak energy constantly through excessive talking, nervous fidgeting, or revealing too much information too quickly. They exhaust themselves while failing to create any lasting impression. The leader's journey involves learning to conserve energy, to withhold, to create tension, to let anticipation build until others literally bend toward you, desperate for the release only you can provide. This creates a form of psychological gravity. When you refuse to leak energy through nervous habits, you create a vacuum that pulls others into your orbit. They begin orbiting around you, not because you chased their attention, but because you became the center of gravity in the room. The decision to conserve rather than expend creates this powerful dynamic without effort. Consider what happens in meetings when someone speaks constantly, gestures wildly, and fills every silence. Their energy dissipates without impact. Now contrast this with someone who speaks rarely, moves deliberately, and maintains unwavering focus. When they finally speak or act, the entire room reorients toward them. This isn't coincidence. It's the direct result of energy conservation creating attention magnetism. The profound wisdom here is that presence isn't about doing more, it's about doing less with absolute intention. It's about eliminating everything that dilutes your impact rather than desperately trying to increase it through more activity. Let me guide you through how consistency transforms this. Presence from occasional performance into an identity that reshapes how the world responds to you. Leave in the comments, "I conserve my power," if you recognize how restraining your energy creates a force field that draws others toward you without effort. The ultimate transformation in your leadership journey comes when you understand that presence is not a performance, it's an identity. The revelation that separates genuine leaders from pretenders is consistency. Most people switch their presence on and off like a costume, commanding the room during presentations but shrinking during challenges. True leaders understand that people are always watching, always testing, always measuring your authenticity against your claims to power. Your aura must remain intact, whether you're speaking or silent, commanding a meeting or walking away. The decision to maintain unwavering presence becomes your signature, the unbroken thread that runs through every interaction, every challenge, every triumph. This consistency creates a psychological foundation that others can depend on, even as they fear its strength. They know exactly who you are because you never waver. Behind the scenes of true leadership is the mask of ruthless calm. While the average person displays emotions like open wounds, raging when frustrated, panicking when pressured, complaining when challenged, the Machiavellian leader reveals nothing while controlling everything. This isn't about being emotionless. It's about strategic emotional discipline. The breakthrough insight is that people simultaneously trust and fear those who appear unshakable. In chaos, they instinctively look for the one person whose pulse remains steady. The mindset revolution begins when you understand that calm is not weakness. It's calculation. It's the advanced art of disguising internal fire beneath a surface of ice. When someone insults you, you don't react, you measure. When challenges arise, you don't panic, you strategize. The impact of this approach is immediate and profound. Your calmness suffocates the impulsive, exposes the undisciplined, and unsettles the arrogant, all without you lifting a finger. Consider what happens in a high-tension moment when everyone else is losing control. The person who maintains ruthless calm instantly becomes the center of gravity, not because they're speaking loudly or asserting dominance explicitly, but because their very stillness communicates mastery. When you refuse to be provoked, you demonstrate that you exist at a level above emotional manipulation. You show that you cannot be controlled through the usual levers of human psychology. The journey to this state requires relentless self-awareness. Most people believe they're calm under pressure until the first real test arrives. Developing this quality means honestly confronting your emotional triggers and systematically disarming them one by one. It means practicing stillness when every instinct screams for reaction. The enlightenment comes when you realize that emotional discipline isn't suppression. It's elevation to a state where you choose your responses rather than being hijacked by them. Let me guide you through how this ruthless calm multiplies the weight of your words, creating an environment where your silence builds anticipation and your speech arrives with the gravity of prophecy. Share in the comments, "I wear the mask of calm," if you recognize how emotional discipline is the foundation of true power in every leadership situation. The amplification of your words through disciplined restraint creates one of the most powerful psychological dynamics in leadership. When you've maintained perfect control, refusing to be provoked, denying others the satisfaction of emotional reaction, something remarkable happens the moment you finally choose to speak. People instinctively lean forward. They sense the gravity of words that have been carefully weighed rather than impulsively offered. This isn't manipulation, it's the natural human response to scarcity and intention. The enlightenment comes when you recognize that your calmness has trained others to associate your words with deliberate choice rather than emotional reaction. You've starved them of noise, creating hunger for substance. So when sound finally emerges from silence, it lands with the weight of prophecy rather than opinion. This transformation in how others receive your communication happens automatically once you've established the pattern of speaking only when necessary and always with purpose. A critical revelation in your leadership journey is understanding that calmness should never be confused with softness or weakness. True calmness is the blade hidden in the velvet sheath. It's the cold stare that communicates, "Push me and I will end you without raising my voice." This form of controlled power carries an aura of inevitability, the unspoken understanding that nothing can break you, nothing can distract you, nothing can penetrate your armor of self-control. When people sense this reality, they stop testing boundaries. The decision to maintain calm in the face of provocation isn't surrender. It's strategic dominance that communicates you operate at a level beyond emotional manipulation. Your adversaries quickly learn that attempts to provoke you only expose their own weakness while revealing nothing about your vulnerabilities. Machiavelli's ancient wisdom remains strikingly relevant in this context. He warned that effective leaders must embody both the lion and the fox, strong enough to strike when necessary, yet clever enough to conceal their intentions until the moment of maximum advantage. Ruthless calm represents the fox's disguise, hiding the lion's violence beneath a mask of perfect control. The profound insight here is that power exposed loses its edge, while power concealed multiplies its effect. By maintaining unwavering calm, you keep others guessing about your true capabilities and intentions. They know the strength exists, but they cannot measure its boundaries. This uncertainty creates cautious respect, far more valuable than fear based on explicit threats. Your personal evolution requires integrating these dual natures, the discipline to conceal your power until the perfect moment to deploy it, the wisdom to know when silence serves better than speech, the strategic patience to let others reveal their weaknesses while you reveal nothing. This isn't deception. It's the highest form of strategic thinking, where every reaction is chosen rather than compelled. Let's explore the delicate balance between fear and respect, and how mastering this duality creates the foundation for lasting authority rather than temporary compliance. Comment below, lion and fox combined, if you're committed to developing both strength and strategic concealment in your leadership presence. The mastery of leadership begins with a fundamental principle that most people never grasp. The leader who cannot govern their own emotions can never truly govern others. This revelation transforms your entire approach to power. Your emotional self-discipline isn't merely a personal virtue. It's the battleground where leadership is won or lost before a single word is spoken. When you control your emotions, you control the psychological battlefield. When you master your calm, you control the room without effort. This inner discipline creates an outer reality where your presence becomes unassailable. The decision to govern your reactions, rather than being governed by them, establishes a foundation that others unconsciously recognize and respect. They sense something different about you, something they may not be able to articulate, but instinctively respond to with deference. This is the hidden power of emotional sovereignty. The journey deepens when you confront the reality that every leader must decide what currency they will rule with. Machiavelli identified 3 possibilities: love, respect, or fear. The awakening begins when you recognize that weak leaders chase love above all else. They desperately want to be liked, adored, accepted. But this currency is fundamentally fragile. It bends when tested and evaporates entirely when loyalty becomes too costly. Respect, by contrast, is forged in the fires of discipline. It's carved into the memory of others through consistency, strength, and unwavering command. It creates a more durable foundation than love ever could. But the hidden truth that few will admit is that fear, properly wielded, ensures obedience even when respect falters. The psychological insight here isn't about cruelty. It's about understanding human nature at its core. The transformation of your leadership presence accelerates when you grasp that fear and respect aren't opposing forces, but complementary ones. They exist not as enemies, but as twins supporting each other. Fear without respect creates mere tyranny, a brittle power, destined to collapse under its own weight. But respect without fear creates weakness, a foundation destined to be tested and eventually broken by those who sense no consequences for betrayal. The leader who commands both becomes untouchable. People follow not only because they admire you, but because they dare not cross you. That dual current creates a psychological grip that neither force alone could maintain. It's the perfect balance that keeps followers loyal through both positive and negative. Motivation, the carrot and the stick united in a single leadership presence. Consider how this balance manifests in every interaction. When you enter a room, your presence should force people to choose their words carefully. That's fear working in your favor. Yet simultaneously, they should look to you for guidance, hungry for your approval. That's respect completing the circuit. In this duality, you become both the storm they fear and the shelter they seek. Let me show you how this balance creates an aura of inevitable authority that transforms you from mere manager into true leader. Type in the comments, fear and respect united, if you're ready to master this powerful duality in your own leadership journey. The metamorphosis of your leadership presence continues when you understand that consistency is not merely a virtue, it's a command in itself. The revelation that transforms mediocre managers into unforgettable leaders is realizing you cannot demand respect on Monday and then beg for approval on Tuesday. This fundamental inconsistency destroys authority faster than any external challenge ever could. True consistency requires relentless discipline. Every word you speak, every action you take, every silence you maintain must reinforce the same unbreakable image of strength. The awakening happens when you grasp that the moment you break character, the moment you show weakness after claiming strength or seek validation after projecting certainty, the illusion of your authority dissolves completely. People forgive many things, but inconsistency in leadership is rarely among them. The journey requires brutal honesty about your current patterns. Do you shift between confidence and insecurity? Do you assert boundaries only to abandon them later? Do you demand excellence one day, but accept mediocrity the next? Each inconsistency broadcasts that your leadership is performance rather than identity. Something you wear rather than something you are. Behind the scenes of commanding fear lies a profound insight. Genuine fear doesn't require cruelty or brutality. It requires consequences. The transformation occurs when you realize that people must simply understand that betrayal, disrespect, or disobedience carries a tangible cost. The most powerful leaders never need to shout, threaten, or create dramatic scenes. They punish silently, decisively, and without hesitation. When you enforce consequences with calm precision, others don't just obey, they remember. This isn't about vengeance or ego. It's about establishing the boundaries that protect your authority. Fear creates those boundaries, while respect fills them. Together, they form the fortress that keeps your leadership intact against all challenges. Consider what happens when someone enters your domain. If your presence forces them to choose their words carefully, that's fear working properly. If simultaneously they look to you for guidance, that's respect completing the circuit. The insight that revolutionizes your understanding of power is recognizing that control, not brute strength, not charisma, not luck, forms the true foundation of leadership. Power isn't simply about what you can do, it's about what you can make others believe, feel, and ultimately obey. Control operates on multiple levels simultaneously: self-control, environmental control, and psychological control over those you lead. The decision to master control begins with yourself. A leader who cannot regulate their impulses becomes nothing more than a slave to them. Powerful in title, perhaps, but fundamentally weak in reality. Machiavelli understood this paradox. Emotions like anger make you reckless. Desires make you predictable. Fears make you manipulable. The first step toward genuine control is creating silence within, disciplining your mind until emotions become your tools rather than your masters. Let me guide you through the subtle art of shaping perception, how leaders create reality itself through the careful manipulation of how others see them and their authority. Write in the comments, "I command through consistency," if you're committed to building unwavering authority that never breaks character, even under pressure. The architecture of control extends beyond mere self-discipline into the realm of perception engineering. After mastering your internal landscape, the next frontier becomes shaping how others perceive you. This isn't deception, it's strategic reality creation. The revelation transforming your leadership journey is understanding that perception is reality, and reality is power. Most people believe truth automatically reveals itself. Leaders know that humans rarely follow truth. They follow the image, the decision to appear confident even when uncertain, unshaken even when threatened, inevitable even when the odds lean against you, creates a psychological reality others respond to more powerfully than any objective situation. This is why rulers throughout history wore crowns, why generals display medals, why leaders surround themselves with symbols of authority. The human mind is wired to obey appearances rather than invisible truths. Master this principle, and you can command without force. Behind the scenes of true influence lies the art of psychological framing. The weak beg for agreement, while the strong manufacture it. The breakthrough moment in your leadership evolution comes when you stop asking, "What should we do?" and start declaring, "This is the way forward." When you replace uncertainty with finality, doubt with certainty, questions with statements, you'll witness others naturally conforming to your psychological frame. Consider what happens when you enter a challenging situation. Most people broadcast their uncertainty. "What do you think we should do?" Or "I'm not sure about this approach." This language pattern immediately cedes control and invites others to fill the vacuum with their own hesitation and doubt. The Machiavellian leader instead declares, "This is our path," or "We will proceed in this direction." Notice how these statements frame reality itself, rather than merely suggesting possibilities within it. The illumination comes when you realize that the human mind abhors uncertainty. When faced with confusion, people instinctively gravitate towards certainty, even if that certainty comes from outside themselves. By speaking with absolute conviction, you create a psychological lighthouse in the fog of doubt. Others will navigate toward your certainty, not because you've convinced them through superior logic, but because you've reshaped the landscape of what feels possible and inevitable. This psychological framing requires disciplined language patterns. Eliminate phrases like "I think" or "maybe we could" from your vocabulary. Replace them with declarations. "It will be," "This is," "We are." These aren't merely grammatical shifts. They're fundamental reality reshaping tools. The leader doesn't just speak. They engineer belief through precise linguistic architecture. The mindset transformation here is profound. You're no longer merely participating in reality. You're actively creating it through your framed perception, controlled emotions, and deliberate certainty. This isn't manipulation for its own sake. It's the recognition that human psychology demands leadership that creates structure amid chaos, certainty amid doubt, direction amid confusion. Let me guide you through the invisible empire of influence, how words become levers that move entire worlds, and how properly constructed language patterns create domination through suggestion rather than force. Write in the comments, "I shape perception," if you're ready to master the art of creating reality through strategic presence and unshakable certainty. The revelation that reshapes your entire understanding of leadership comes when you recognize that influence, not force, not position, not even respect, creates the invisible empire of true power. Armies may conquer territory through physical domination. Wealth may purchase temporary loyalty through transaction. But influence conquers minds completely. And once you've captured a mind, the body follows without resistance, without question, without hesitation. This transformation in your leadership journey marks the distinction between those who must constantly push others forward and those who create willing followers. Influence is not persuasion in the weak sense of begging someone to agree with you. It's domination through suggestion, through authority, through the silent pressure that makes others choose exactly what you want, while believing it was entirely their idea. The hidden truth of human psychology is that people resist being pushed, but embrace being led. The foundation of this invisible empire begins with credibility. The illumination comes when you understand that people never listen to the loudest voice in the room. They listen to the voice they believe. This is why your presence, your calm, your precision, your consistency all serve as groundwork for influence. Every time you speak, you are either building or destroying credibility with those around you. The decision to say less, but to speak with absolute authority when you do, creates a psychological environment where your words gain weight over time. Consider how differently people receive information from someone they trust versus someone they doubt. The exact same statement, delivered by different speakers, creates entirely different responses. The journey to becoming the voice people trust requires ruthless self-discipline. Never speak unless you're certain. Never claim knowledge you don't possess. Never make promises you can't fulfill. Each time you demonstrate perfect alignment between your words and reality, your credibility compounds like interest on an investment. Behind the scenes of human behavior lies the psychology of need, the breakthrough. Insight that transforms your influence is recognizing that humans crave three fundamental things: validation that they matter, direction when they're uncertain, and certainty in an unpredictable world. When you position yourself as the provider of these psychological necessities, you gain enormous power without force. Influence thrives on identifying what others genuinely need, whether it's safety, recognition, purpose, belonging, or meaning, and becoming the exclusive source that fulfills that need. Suddenly, your voice becomes indispensable, your presence magnetic. The Machiavellian wisdom reveals a profound truth. People are inherently self-interested, but predictable. When you appeal directly to their core desires and deepest fears, you can guide them anywhere. The art of influence means never pushing directly against resistance. Instead, you guide subtly, like water shaping stone over time. A direct order may spark defiance, but a well-placed suggestion makes obedience feel natural, even inevitable. When you frame decisions so that your preferred option feels like the only rational choice, you win without fighting. Let me guide you through the principle of scarcity, how limiting your presence and approval creates hunger that multiplies your influence beyond what constant availability ever could. Type in the comments, "I build influence through credibility," if you recognize how trusted authority creates power that far exceeds what force alone could ever accomplish. The pinnacle of leadership mastery arrives when you understand that power scattered is power vulnerable. Your journey toward unassailable authority culminates in building the fortress of untouchability, the final evolution that protects your mind, time, energy, and reputation from those who would drain or damage them. This isn't isolation, it's strategic invulnerability that allows you to lead without being compromised. The revelation that transforms ordinary leaders into legends is recognizing that power must be protected with the same vigilance used to acquire it. Like a fortress with high walls and carefully guarded gates, your presence in the world must be designed to repel attacks, resist manipulation, and maintain integrity against constant testing. When you build this fortress properly, you become untouchable not through aggression, but through impenetrability. Behind the scenes of this transformation lies the foundational element of boundaries. Weak individuals have none. They allow anyone to demand their time, anyone to drain their focus, anyone to trespass on their energy. The awakening begins when you realize that true leaders are deliberately scarce. This scarcity isn't accidental, it's calculated. By denying easy access, you exponentially multiply your perceived value. By controlling who gets to hear you, who gets to see you, who gets your attention, you increase the weight of your presence. Consider what happens when someone is constantly available, constantly explaining, constantly seeking approval. Their value diminishes through overexposure. The untouchable leader speaks rarely, but when they do, the words thunder. They appear selectively, but when they do, the atmosphere shifts. This calculated scarcity creates psychological hunger in others, a desire to earn your approval, your attention, your guidance. They value what they cannot easily have. The profound metamorphosis in your leadership journey occurs when you understand that this isn't merely a role you play. It must become your identity. Ascension to true power means leadership fuses with your nature completely. You cannot step in and out of leadership like a costume worn for specific occasions. You cannot wear power temporarily and then remove it when convenient. The integration must be total, transforming you from someone who acts like a leader into someone who simply is a leader in every moment. This identity shift represents the decision point from which there is no return. Once you ascend, once you embody these principles fully, there is no going back to mediocrity, to being liked, to explaining yourself, to seeking validation. You will live differently. You will be judged differently. But you will also be followed differently, respected differently, remembered differently. That is both the burden and the reward of this transformation. The journey from ordinary to extraordinary requires accepting that leadership is not performance, it's identity. When you wake, you move with presence. When you speak, you cut with precision. When you lead, you do so from a fortress of untouchability. It becomes instinct rather than effort. Your very being radiates the accumulated force of these principles working in concert. Let me guide you through the psychology of control, how true leaders understand that power isn't merely about directing others, but about orchestrating reality itself through calculated intention and strategic influence. Write in the comments, "I am becoming untouchable," if you recognize this fortress of leadership identity forming within you, protecting your power from those who would dilute or challenge it. You've journeyed with me through the shadows of true leadership, not the sanitized version sold in corporate seminars, but the raw, unfiltered truth about power that few will ever master. What separates those who command from those who merely request is not luck or title. It's the deliberate application of these principles until they become second nature. The transformation we've explored isn't for everyone. Some will hear these words and dismiss them as too harsh, too calculating, too honest about human nature. But you've stayed until the end because something deeper resonates within you, the recognition that leadership isn't about being liked. It's about being followed, respected, and ultimately remembered. Each principle we've covered, from strategic silence to precise speech, from commanding presence to ruthless calm, builds upon the others to create not just a skill set, but an identity that separates you from the masses who speak without impact, move without purpose, and lead without authority. If these principles have struck a chord within you, if you sense the power they could bring to your life, there's a natural next step. Subscribe to this channel, not because I ask, but because the journey we've started deserves continuation. This knowledge isn't meant to be sampled once and forgotten. It's meant to be studied, applied, and mastered. Leave your mark in the comments with the words, "I am ascending," if you've recognized yourself in this message. If you felt that pull toward becoming something more than ordinary, something that commands rather than requests, something that leads rather than follows. A simple like on this video creates a connection between those who understand these principles and those still searching. It signals to others that this knowledge, though uncomfortable for some, resonates with those ready to embrace their power. There's a video right here that delves into the psychology of influence, the perfect complement to what we've explored today. Click and continue this journey with me there as we peel back another layer of what separates those who merely exist from those who truly command. The choice, as always, remains yours. But remember, once you begin to embody these principles, there is no returning to mediocrity. The path of power awaits those brave enough to walk it.